What is a true fact so baffling, it should be false? There used to be a radioactive energy drink called Redditors that was in the US market for a decade from 1918 to 1928. Some of the more prominent users had to be buried in lead coffins. Nuka-Cola. Giant squids have a donut-shaped brain, so their esophagus can run through the middle. If they try to swallow too large a bite of food, they can get brain damage. It's crazy to think that giant squid used to be one of those mysterious sea monsters. Is it though? That thing looks like something out of a nightmare. You can boil water in a paper cup over an open flame. I thought witchcraft was outlawed. How many nipples ya got? There are far more tigers in private collections in Texas than there are in the rest of the world, wild or otherwise. That is so sad. It isn't. It's sad that so few exist in the wild, but private live animal collectors and private hunting companies have actually managed to keep a lot of endangered animals alive. If people want to buy/hunt them, there is a major incentive to keep them alive, and in high numbers. It isn't considering that they're literally only being kept alive so that they can be killed for pleasure or kept as trophies. It's just sad. There's no happy side to that coin. Ireland was a net exporter of food during the Great Potato Famine. That's what caused the famine. The Brits exported all the food and the Irish were left with only one small kind of potato for themselves, which then was afflicted with disease. I think we can agree it should be false, and if not for the outright disdain for human life on the part of the British authorities, would have been. Less so disdain, more so people didn't believe it. The reports were so horrific many believed they were exaggerations, or completely made up. When the Prime Minister of the time tried to do something about it, he made the dumbest decision. To tie it to a political move, I don't recall exactly what, and when that political mood nosedived, the potato famine relief went with it, as did the PM. When he was replaced, the new guy was from a different party and reversed what relief the previous guy had implemented. Giraffe seat bones. When I was in Africa, we were legit surrounded by a family of 12 giraffes. Then one bent over and picked up a gazelle carcass, looked dead into our eyes as it ate its leg. It was so fucking creepy. A morbidly obese person can survive with absolute starvation without any sickness or feeling ill, under close control. There have been studies since 60s. There is a patient in 1973 who went under a 382-day starvation diet for therapeutic purposes under close control with only vitamin and mineral supplements, and water intake without protein, carbohydrate or fat intake, no food at all. Dropped from 207 kilograms to 88 kilograms and maintained it. After a follow-up checkup 5 years later, the patient was 96 kilograms, stabilized. Prolonged fasting had no ill effects. If anybody is curious about the article, the PubMed ID is PMC 2,495,396. Edit. Fixed autocorrect. Keep in mind, for anyone tempted to imitate, multiple others attempted this after him and wound up dead. Do not try this at home. It requires very strict supervision. From what I remember, a lot of deaths are from when they start eating again. You have to start back extremely slowly. More people died making the V2 rockets during WW2 than were killed by them. Another fun fact about V2 rockets, Germany was facing a large issue with rocket fuel shortages during the project because people kept drinking it. The fuel was made from 70% ethyl alcohol and 30% water, distilled from potatoes. It was the most economically viable fuel at the time, since they were already very low on other fuels. To stop workers from drinking it, they denatured the alcohol, essentially poisoning it, but people kept drinking it anyways, and getting extremely ill. This simply caused people to start leaving the V2 program, suggesting that they were only in it for the free alcohol. This also means that any alcohol over 70% ABV is stronger than actual WW2 rocket fuel. During Prohibition in the US, people started drinking industrial alcohol, and hardcore prohibitionists insisted that it be denatured by the addition of methanol. The strategy actually backfired because people saw that guys who committed the only crime of sneaking a little banned drink were being punished with blindness and death. People were deliberately infected with malaria to cure their syphilis, and the man who developed this treatment, Julius Werner Jauregg, received the Nobel Prize for it. The extremely high fevers of the malaria infections killed the syphilis bacteria, then the patients were cured of the malaria using quinine. Quinine is the reason tonic water glows under black light. Till tonic water glows under black light. Yeah, why da fuck, aren't we all serving gin and tonics at Halloween parties? Taser is actually an acronym for Thomas A. Swift's electric rifle, TASER. So his name was Thomas A. Swift's electric rifle face? Now it makes sense. Now I see why he chose it over Skritamhut. Switzerland has accidentally invaded Liechtenstein thrice in the last 50 years. On the first time in 1976, Swiss military got lost and ended up in Liechtenstein, so the Liechtensteiners offered them drinks like proper hosts. On the second time in 1992, Swiss military forgot that a certain observation post was actually not in Swiss territory, but in Liechtenstein territory, so they just said sorry and forgot about it. Then again in 2007, the Swiss army got lost and entered Liechtenstein, but eventually realized they weren't in Switzerland anymore. Toto. So they turned back. Liechtenstein didn't even know this happened till the Swiss apologized again, to which they basically said, no problem, bro. Takeaways. The Swiss army are bad with directions. The Liechtenstein army people are chill brothers. The USA is the third most populated nation on Earth. If you were able to add 1 billion people to the US population today, it would still be the third most populated nation on Earth. I thought we were full. Just look at the Midwest and imagine if it was actually populated. It says fail rate is over 80%. I personally know someone who in his carry-on accidentally packed a loaded handgun, made it on the plane, and was so freaked out when he landed, he upsed it back home and took a Greyhound bus after his trip. I know a dumbass that flew internationally with a handgun in his checked luggage, on accident, but still a dumb asshole. He left out of Florida heading for South Korea with a layover in Japan. The Japanese found it, and he was arrested and spent over 2 weeks in jail. They let him go. What's with people accidentally packing guns in their luggage? I've never accidentally packed anything, let alone a weapon. A million seconds ago was week before last, July 24th. A billion seconds ago was 1988, 1987. Ed made some rounding errors. We're looking at November. Never thought of large numbers like this before. Kinda puts some people's wealth into perspective. The life of Frane Selleck, the luckiest unlucky man in the world. January 1962, Frane is riding on a train through a freezing canyon when it fell into an icy river. All 17 other passengers died, while he escapes with a broken arm and hypothermia. 1963, on his first plane trip he was sucked out of the plane's door and landed in a haystack. Unscathed, 19 other people were killed in the crash. 1966, he was riding in a bus when it skidded off the road into yet another icy river. 4 passengers drowned, while he only received some minor cuts and bruises. 1970, his car's engine burst into flames while he was driving, but he managed to escape before it exploded. 1973, in yet another driving incident, his car's engine was doused with hot oil from a broken fuel pump. This caused flames to shoot through the air vents, singing off all of his hair. He was otherwise unharmed. 1995, he was hit by a bus, but only sustained minor injuries. 1996, to escape a head-on collision with a United Nations truck on a mountain curve, he swerved into a guardrail that broke on impact to save himself. He jumped out of his car's open door and grabbed onto a tree branch as he watched his car plummet off the cliff. Suffice to say, the guy had a complicated relationship with the Grim Reaper. Edit. Got his name wrong. Edit 2. Got the first edit wrong. Turns out I was right the first time. Sharks evolved before trees did. Trees evolved before the bugs responsible for rotting, that is bacteria which could eat lignin and cellulose, did. Thus when they died, they just fell over in place and lay there instead of rotting. Over time the weight of the upper layers of tree corpses compacted the lower levels, which eventually became the coal we dig up and use today. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos.